Many people waste their energy confronting enemies they can see. Yet today I will reveal a hidden truth. You do not need to lift a hand in any battle. There is a spiritual weapon already waiting in your kitchen. It is something so simple that most people overlook it, yet in the spiritual realm, it shakes the strongholds of the wicked and causes your adversaries to beg for mercy. That weapon is salt, not merely a seasoning for food, but a divine symbol of preservation, purity, and covenant. Many make the mistake of thinking the struggles of life are fought with words, fists, or vengeance. The truth is, life is fundamentally a spiritual matter, and victories come from understanding spiritual laws. When you fight with your own strength, you end up weary, frustrated, and defeated. But when you allow God to fight through His symbols, you remain calm while your enemies stumble in confusion. Salt is one of those heavenly symbols that evil fears. Salt has always represented preservation. When you sprinkle it with faith, you are not just scattering grains on the floor, you are establishing a barrier that evil spirits cannot breach. The wicked may plot against you, but when the covenant of salt is invoked, their own schemes backfire. It is a subtle act in the physical, but in the spirit it is like thunder breaking their foundations. Instead of plotting revenge or wasting time over betrayals, rise at midnight, hold salt in your hand and declare with authority, "By this covenant of salt I reject every curse, I halt every evil, I send back every wicked arrow to the sender." When you do this, the very people who sought your downfall begin to falter in their own traps. Enemies succeed when you fight in the flesh, because that is where they are strong. But when you employ spiritual strategies like salt, you move the battle into God's realm of authority. This makes the instructions simple. Never physically confront your enemies. Just use salt and watch them cry for mercy. They will not comprehend why their attacks fail, why their curses turn into blessings, or why their schemes collapse into nothingness. Salt is unaffected by witches, demons, or spells. Once dedicated in prayer and wielded as a weapon of light, it transforms the atmosphere around you. Darkness abhors purity, and salt is purity you can touch. When a child of God seals their home with salt, it acts as a wall of fire, a shield preventing intrusions. The weapon you need is already within your grasp. You do not require charms, you do not need to plead for help, and you do not have to spend large sums on rituals. Through faith, prayer, and salt, your home can become untouchable, and your enemies will be forced to surrender. Though most associate salt solely with cooking, its spiritual significance is far deeper. It embodies the mystery of covenant. In ancient times, when two parties made a covenant, sharing salt signified that the agreement could not be broken. When used in faith, salt becomes a declaration of protection that cannot be broken by witchcraft, envy, or the evil eye. It serves as a spiritual shield that remains intact under attack. Salt also signifies preservation. Just as it prevents food from decaying, it preserves your life from the destructive plans of enemies. Traps set against your career, health, or family are neutralized when salt is employed spiritually. Every attempt to sabotage your reputation, block your progress, or ruin your opportunities becomes powerless. Salt declares, "You shall not rot, you shall not be wasted, your blessings are kept safe." Salt is also a symbol of purification. It cleanses water, wounds, and even air. When you sprinkle salt in your home after prayer, you are not merely scattering grains, you are cleansing the spiritual environment. Hidden demons cannot endure this purity, and they flee, leaving your home a haven of peace. Enemies who once could infiltrate suddenly find themselves blocked. Salt further represents value. Historically, it was so precious it was used as currency. Spiritually, this means that by using salt with purpose, you declare your value in God's eyes. Those who seek to diminish you are forced to recognize your worth, bowing as your life rises in favor. The reason salt troubles enemies is that they thrive on corruption, decay, and impurity. Witchcraft feeds on filth. Evil spirits inhabit unclean spaces, and curses flourish where weakness resides. But when salt is introduced, all these sources of power are neutralized. Darkness is overwhelmed and must retreat. There is no need for complex rituals. Hold salt in your hand, speak with authority, and sprinkle it with faith. The potency lies not in the quantity of salt, but in the power of your words. A small amount, properly used, becomes a spiritual sword that disarms your enemies without physical confrontation. Those who oppose you will be bewildered. Their plans fail, curses rebound, and jealousy turns against them. Salt erects a divine barrier that God Himself honors. This is why seemingly small acts cannot be underestimated. Just as David used a single stone to defeat Goliath, salt can topple the giants of oppression in your life. While others may scoff at this simple practice, they will be astounded when they witness your enemies forced to surrender while you remain protected. One of the most potent applications of salt is at your doorway. The doorway is not just a physical entry but a spiritual gateway. Many attacks originate through gates. By sprinkling salt across your threshold after prayer, you signal to the spiritual realm that no evil, curse, or enemy may enter. Any attempt is met with the covenant of preservation, causing the intruder to stumble before crossing the line. Reflect on how often trouble follows guests into a home. It may not be the individuals themselves, but the spirits accompanying them. Sealing your doorways with salt communicates to the spiritual world that your house is off limits. Corners of your home are also significant. Evil spirits love dark, neglected spaces. Arguments, strange behavior in children, or eerie shadows often originate in these corners. Sprinkling salt into these spaces after prayer removes their foothold, cleansing the environment and creating an atmosphere of divine peace. Salt can be dissolved in water for cleansing purposes. When prayed over, this water becomes a spiritual purifier. Washing with it or sprinkling it in your rooms declares purification, breaking every curse of delay, every spirit of rejection, and every chain of stagnation. Opportunities open as your aura is spiritually refined. Salt can also enhance prayer circles. Drawing a circle with salt around your prayer spot and declaring that no evil may cross its boundary strengthens your prayers. Within this protected circle, your words rise uninterrupted and demonic interference is halted. Enemies once capable of influencing your life suddenly find themselves blocked. Any spiritual attacks directed at you rebound against the sender, and the curses they cast intensify upon themselves. This is why practitioners of witchcraft are confounded and cry for mercy when confronted with a believer's salt ritual. This is not superstition, it is spiritual wisdom. God often uses simple elements to dismantle complex powers. Just as Moses' staff parted the Red Sea, salt in your hands transforms into more than grains. It becomes a divine instrument, a conduit of protection, purity, and preservation. Every aspect of your life that is vulnerable to attack can be shielded. By embracing the power of salt with faith, prayer, and authority, your enemies are left powerless, and your life rises unscathed. Every sprinkling of salt, every prayerful word spoken establishes a spiritual fortress. Each corner, doorway, and threshold cleansed fortifies your home and life against intrusion. Enemies find no ground, curses lose potency, and malicious plans crumble. Salt is a tangible expression of spiritual law, a covenant of God's protection, and a symbol of divine value. What appears simple is profoundly effective. It transforms ordinary moments into acts of spiritual victory. In your home, at your thresholds, in your prayer circles, salt becomes a powerful ally. The forces of darkness, accustomed to decay and impurity, are powerless against it. Each grain becomes a messenger of preservation and divine authority. The wicked who seek your downfall find themselves ensnared by their own devices. Your environment becomes a sanctuary of peace, purity, and blessing. Through consistent, faith-filled use, salt elevates the spiritual atmosphere, ensuring protection, prosperity, and divine favor. Salt works quietly, yet its effect in the spiritual realm is monumental. It neutralizes attacks, reverses curses, and enforces boundaries that cannot be breached. The unseen world responds to faith applied with simple tools. Those who rely on witchcraft, envy, or malice cannot endure its presence. In the hands of a believer, salt becomes a sword, a shield, and a purifier. Every corner of your life touched by it resonates with authority and divine protection. Enemies who plotted destruction are left confused, powerless, and ultimately defeated. Through the practical application of salt, you participate in God's work of preservation and purity. It transcends physical limitations, demonstrating that faith paired with simple action can achieve remarkable outcomes. Salt becomes more than an ordinary substance. It embodies covenant, authority, and divine power. The spiritual realm recognizes it, and the forces of evil are constrained. By using salt with prayer and intent, you align with God's protective purposes, ensuring your life, home, and family remain unharmed. Even the smallest amount of salt, used correctly, carries the weight of God's covenant. It halts decay, purifies spaces, and establishes spiritual boundaries that cannot be penetrated. The invisible forces that oppose you are compelled to retreat. Through faith, prayer, and deliberate action, salt transforms from a humble kitchen item into a mighty spiritual weapon. Its effects are profound, far-reaching, and unmistakably powerful. Your home becomes a sanctuary, your life becomes shielded, enemies falter, schemes collapse, and blessings remain intact. Salt does not respect the strength of witches, demons, or curses. It responds to authority spoken in faith, creating an environment of divine order. By consistently using salt in prayer, at thresholds, in corners, and in water, you enforce spiritual laws that protect, preserve, and uplift. Even unseen gates of your life are secured. The spiritual potency of salt lies not in quantity, but in the faith and authority behind its use. Scattered thoughtfully and accompanied by prayer, it becomes a channel for God's protection. Evil cannot stand where purity resides. Every threat is neutralized, every attack reversed, and every plot defeated. Salt is simple, yet its power is unmatched, quietly commanding victory over forces that seek your harm. When you engage with salt spiritually, you participate in a divine process of preservation, protection, and purification. Its symbolic power is grounded in ancient wisdom and reinforced through faith. Just as physical salt preserves and purifies, spiritual salt guards, cleanses, and shields. It speaks to the invisible forces, enforcing God's authority and causing enemies to stumble. By applying salt in your life, home, and prayer, you create layers of protection that cover every aspect of existence. Your spiritual environment becomes a fortress, your adversaries are disarmed, and your blessings are preserved. The covenant of salt assures that all negative forces are rendered ineffective. With consistent use, your life becomes a testament to the quiet yet mighty authority of simple, faith-filled actions. Salt is a spiritual instrument of preservation, purification, and protection. When used correctly, it enforces divine authority, disrupts evil plans, and establishes sanctuaries of peace and safety. The unseen world responds, and forces of darkness are confounded. Through prayer, faith, and the deliberate application of salt, the believer transforms ordinary grains into an extraordinary spiritual weapon. Enemies who seek harm are disarmed, their curses rebound, their schemes collapse. Each act of faith using salt reinforces a spiritual shield that cannot be breached. It is a reminder that God often uses simple tools to accomplish mighty purposes. What appears small in the physical carries monumental power in the spiritual. Through salt, protection, preservation, and purification become tangible realities, turning ordinary spaces into fortified sanctuaries and ordinary moments into acts of divine victory. It becomes a spiritual divider, separating you from evil and separating evil from your life. It is a covenant tool that quiets the noise of your enemies and restores calm to your household. Witchcraft operates in secrecy, growing in hidden corners and feeding on fear, but salt exposes it and crushes it instantly. When a witch releases an arrow against you, they expect to find an opening, a weakness to exploit. But when you have applied salt with prayer, every doorway is sealed. Their arrows strike a wall of resistance and return to them with multiplied force. That is why salt makes witches plead for mercy, because they are struck by the very curses they intended for you. What was designed to bring harm to your life becomes their own downfall. There are countless stories of people who suffered prolonged oppression until they discovered the covenant mystery of salt. Nightmares ended, financial stagnation disappeared. Strange illnesses vanished simply because they prayed and sealed their homes with salt. The enemy despises purity and preservation, and salt carries both qualities with authority. It forms an invisible line that the wicked cannot cross, and if they dare attempt, they fall into their own snares. This is why Scripture itself refers to believers as the salt of the earth. Salt carries weight both in the natural world and in the spiritual dimension. Sealing your home with salt remains one of the most effective strategies of spiritual warfare. You do not need shouting or physical confrontation. Walk through your home at midnight, sprinkle salt at the doors, windows, and gates, and declare, "This home is sealed by the covenant of salt. No curse, no witchcraft, no spirit of darkness shall pass here." As you do this, you draw an unshakable circle of protection. Evil forces see your dwelling glowing with spiritual brightness and turn away in fear. Curses cannot survive where salt stands. A curse thrives on impurity, decay, and weakness, but salt halts its growth instantly. When a curse is spoken against you, place salt in your hands and declare, "This curse is powerless. I am preserved." Then wash your hands in salty water and feel the burden lifting off you. That curse has no place in your future. Instead of carrying spiritual loads spoken by others, you carry blessings safeguarded by the covenant of preservation. Salt can also be poured on crossroads or paths where you sense spiritual heaviness. Many practitioners of darkness attempt to build spiritual traps in such areas. But when you pour salt there with prayer, you dismantle their networks. Their altars crumble because the purity of salt disrupts their incantations. They may gather to renew their rituals, but find their strength lost. It is not you who fought them. It is the covenant attached to the salt that fought on your behalf. Salt shatters family curses as well. Families that encounter repeated cycles of misfortune, illness, or untimely death can rise above those chains through prayer with salt. When you stand with salt and declare that every destructive pattern ends now, you draw a boundary that the curse cannot cross. From that moment on, your lineage begins to walk in freedom, and the enemies maintaining those curses lose their grip and plead for mercy. Enemies do not cry for mercy because you physically confront them. They cry because spiritual law has turned against them. Salt is not vengeance. It is divine justice. It sends back every arrow, every curse, every wicked operation to its origin. When the wicked reap the results of their own actions, they are forced to give up, confess, and acknowledge that you cannot be harmed. Many people assume that salt by itself carries power, but the truth is deeper. Salt serves as a symbolic point of contact with spiritual meaning. Without faith, it is simply seasoning, but with faith-filled declarations spoken over it, salt becomes a weapon of spiritual light that heaven recognizes and darkness fears. It is not superstition. It is awakening to the truth that God uses simple tools to confound the wise. When you hold salt in your hands and pray, you are not just holding grains. You are holding covenant. You are declaring, "My life is preserved, my destiny is purified, my family is secured." That understanding fuels the power behind your actions. Demons do not flee merely because salt is present. They flee because of the authority spoken through it. This is why some use salt with no result, while others see immediate breakthroughs. The difference is awareness. It is knowing the authority backing your actions. Ask yourself, are you still battling enemies you see? Are you wasting energy on arguments, anger, and revenge? Or have you awakened to the truth that your battles are spiritual and must be handled with spiritual tools? Salt awakens you to this truth. It shifts your perspective from fighting people to confronting the real forces behind them. It reveals that your victory does not come from your strength, but from God's covenant working within you. You begin to feel a peace others cannot explain. They may ask, "Why don't you retaliate? Why don't you curse those who curse you?" Your answer becomes simple. "I do not need to fight. My covenant fights for me." That is the awakening. Salt brings a higher confidence, an awareness that your life is covered, that you cannot be touched, that those who rise against you will scatter. Salt also nurtures humility. Imagine holding something so ordinary, so inexpensive, yet so powerful in the spiritual realm. It reminds you that God does not require grand items to bring deliverance. He uses the simple to produce extraordinary results. That is why you must never despise small things. Your awakening grows when you realize that the greatest battles can be won with the simplest tools when God's hand is upon them. As this understanding deepens, you begin to see salt as a daily reminder of your identity. You are preserved, you are purified, you are valuable, you are untouchable. Salt becomes more than a symbol of warfare. It becomes a symbol of who you are spiritually. And once you live in this identity, your enemies perceive it. They may attempt to strike, but find themselves defeated. They may try to curse you, but accidentally bless you. All because you awaken to the truth that you are spiritually salted and corruption cannot cling to you. This is why thinking is essential. It is not about throwing salt mechanically. It is about aligning your spirit with the truth of God. When your actions match spiritual understanding, they carry weight. That authority is what makes enemies tremble, because they realize they are no longer battling you. They are battling the covenant protecting you. Now that you grasp the covenant of salt, it is time to practice it. Do not wait for an attack before moving. Take salt in your hand tonight and speak your victory. Go to a quiet place, preferably at midnight when spiritual activity is heightened, and hold a handful of salt. Lift it and declare, "By this salt I proclaim preservation. My home is sealed. My enemies are defeated." As those words leave your mouth, the salt becomes fire in the spiritual realm. Begin by sealing your doorway. Sprinkle salt at the entrance and declare, "No curse shall cross this threshold. No witchcraft shall enter here. No spirit of darkness shall step into this home." As you speak, heaven aligns with your words. You are not speaking into empty air. You are addressing the invisible realm. Your salt becomes a fiery line that no evil can cross. Rest that night knowing angels guard your home. Next, walk to the corners of each room. Sprinkle salt in every hidden space and proclaim, "I cleanse this house of every shadow. I cast out every spirit of confusion, sickness, and fear. This home shall overflow with peace, light, and abundance." As you speak, the atmosphere shifts, the heaviness lifts, strange disturbances stop, and tranquility settles over your dwelling. You can also wash your hands in salty water while declaring, "Every chain of stagnation, rejection, and delay is broken. My hands shall prosper, my work shall flourish, my destiny shall shine." As the water flows, imagine every blockage melting away. You rise with a renewed spiritual aura that attracts blessings instead of attacks. Finally, lift the remaining salt and make your warfare proclamation. "Every arrow sent against me returns to its sender. Every curse spoken over my life is reversed. Every work of witchcraft collapses. I am untouchable. My home is preserved. My life is sealed in victory." As you declare this, you activate the laws of spiritual return. Those who conspired against you stumble into their own traps. Those who cursed you taste their own words. Enemies awake in confusion, unsure why their strength has vanished. Some will avoid you, some will confess, and others will weep for mercy because what they planned has turned back upon them. And you, without raising a hand against anyone, walk in peace, protected by the covenant of salt. This is the power of activated salt, silent yet overwhelming, simple yet unstoppable, humble yet victorious. Now that you understand this mystery, do not leave it unused. The greatest mistake is receiving wisdom and never applying it. Take action today. Pick up salt from your kitchen, lift it in prayer, and watch how God fights for you. You will witness hidden battles ending, concealed enemies exposed, and curses shattering like glass. What others fight endlessly to achieve, you will obtain through a single act of faith. Do not look down on what appears ordinary in this world of hidden mysteries. In the ancient stories, the kingdom of shadows mocks those who try to battle using only physical strength, for the shadows thrive where confusion reigns. But in those same stories, the very same shadows tremble when a person invokes higher principles, the spiritual laws woven into the fabric of creation. Salt, in those tales, becomes one of those symbols, not because the grain itself holds power, but because of what it represents in the mythic realm. Whenever a character in these stories lifts it with understanding, the forces of darkness lose access, their arrows dissolve mid-air, and their schemes unravel like threads pulled from an old cloth. They can only cry out because their plans have collapsed upon themselves, and the echo of their undoing reverberates back to them. In these tales, the hero is always urged to take action, for hesitation gives the shadowy forces time to rearrange themselves. But movement, small, steady obedience to spiritual insight, gives the hero victory. Many legends challenge the listener to try the sacred act and return with stories of transformation. Such characters share how peace replaced chaos, how openings appeared where there was once stagnation, and how long-term bondage dissolved into freedom. Their testimonies, retold around fires and gatherings, awaken many who once doubted. These legends always remind listeners that symbolic acts are not magic nor superstition. They are gestures of faith and alignment with the divine powers that govern the unseen world. Salt in these stories becomes a signpost, a bridge, a point of contact. The strength never comes from the grain itself, but from the unseen power believed to stand behind it. Characters in the myth are always reminded not to trust in the salt, but in the Creator whose covenant the salt symbolizes. This is what turns a simple action into a transformative moment. Without that belief, the salt is merely seasoning. But within the narrative, when paired with faith, it becomes a symbol of triumph and clarity. In the myths, the hero rises at night, often at the symbolic hour of midnight, when, in the legends, spiritual movement is at its peak. They grip the salt like a lantern in the dark, murmuring declarations of courage, conviction, and awakening. They act not out of fear, but out of alignment with a greater story already unfolding. Their actions, though gentle, ripple into the spiritual fabric of the tale, and when results appear, symbolic or literal, they share them with family, friends, and their village, sparking a movement of awakening among others who once sat in silent oppression. Those stories describe the rise of individuals known as salt warriors, figures who do not fight with physical weapons, but with understanding. They do not wrestle with human enemies, but with shadows hiding behind grievances, jealousy, fear, and curses. Their battles are won in stillness rather than noise, with spiritual wisdom instead of brute force. And the victory is always shown as already assured, long before the hero takes action, because the greatest power in the story belongs to the light that guides them. This part of the myth tells of listeners who revisit these teachings again and again until they become embedded in their hearts. They practice the rituals symbolically, share them, and stand with a community of others who understand deeper truths. They become part of a tapestry woven through generations, individuals who know that battles are never merely physical but unfold in invisible layers, and that peace in the soul affects peace in the home. In these stories, it is said that many characters struggle with repeating cycles. They pray and fast, yet the conflict seems endless because they have not enacted the symbolic actions tied to their faith. The legend teaches that faith without symbolic gestures is incomplete. The salt, then, becomes not a magical ingredient, but a narrative device, a tool that anchors belief in the physical realm while unlocking deeper currents in the unseen. It is the physical representation of the spiritual truth the hero must grasp. The tales often liken this to the moment Moses lifted his staff, not because the wood was special, but because the action signaled alignment with divine authority. The same principle echoes through the mythic use of salt. A symbol lifted, a gesture made, a faith activated. Within the fictional story world, the salt becomes a physical token that lets the spiritual truth take shape. The myth recounts the tale of Elisha and the poisoned waters, where salt served as the medium for divine intervention. In that story, the salt was thrown into the source, and the waters healed. This imagery becomes powerful symbolism. The idea that sometimes healing must begin at the root, at the source of the corruption. Characters in the myth who feel polluted by bitterness, curses, or stagnation take salt symbolically and cast it into their source, their intentions, their prayers, their hearts, and in the story, transformation follows. The legend cautions not to wait for catastrophe before employing these symbolic tools. Just as one cleans their home physically, the stories urge them to cleanse their surroundings spiritually. Salt becomes a metaphorical purifier, used to maintain inner victory and clarity. A wise builder, the tales insist, does not wait for a wall to crumble before repairing it. So too must the listener maintain the symbolic walls of their life, guarding their inner sanctuary from invasive energies. The hero's home in the myth is described not merely as a structure of wood and stone, but as a sacred dwelling of presence. If unprotected, symbolically or emotionally, it may attract forces that thrive in disorder. These forces enter through unguarded emotional doors, resentment, anger, fear, or through physical spaces left spiritually unacknowledged. The symbolic use of salt becomes a way to proclaim that the territory is claimed by light, covered by divine protection, and off limits to negative forces. In the mythic layers, this same principle applies to the hero's inner self. They are depicted as the living temple, a vessel of spirit that must be maintained with intention. Daily spiritual cleansing is portrayed much like washing hands, symbolic and practical. Salt water becomes a narrative device used by characters to signify the washing away of spiritual residue accumulated throughout their journey. As they wash, they symbolically break away from whatever negativity they may have encountered, through touch, through conversation, through energy. It becomes a ritual of restoration and realignment. The stories extend this principle to business owners, students, travelers, and artisans. Each of their spaces, shops, desks, vehicles, becomes an extension of their spiritual atmosphere. As characters sprinkle symbolic salt around these areas, they narratively declare prosperity, clarity, protection, and favor. They anchor their intention in the space where their work unfolds, transforming the ordinary into the sacred. This theme repeats across many stories. The idea that every space where a person expresses their purpose should be blessed and safeguarded. The myth grows even deeper when describing personal enemies. Instead of direct confrontation, the hero of the tale retreats into solitude, holding a container of salt as a symbolic object representing preservation and purity. They whisper the name of the antagonist not as a curse but as a declaration of justice. They proclaim that every harmful intention will return harmlessly to its origin, transformed by the law of divine balance. This is not hatred, it is cosmic justice, a universal balance depicted within the narrative. And once done, the hero either seals the container or releases it, marking the relinquishing of control to the divine. The beauty of the covenant within the myth is that it functions like a spiritual current that flows even while the hero sleeps. Once the symbolic act is complete, the tension dissipates. The hero no longer worries, no longer watches every shadow. The covenant takes over like a living force within the narrative, reshaping events quietly. Meanwhile, those who plotted harm in the story begin to feel the turning of the tide, bewildered by their own plans falling apart. This is the wisdom concealed in ancient storytelling, the simple overturning the complex, the symbolic overpowering the literal. The hero is not mocked for using humble tools. They are honored because they understand the deeper law binding the universe together. This is the confidence they walk in, the recognition that the divine has supplied every spiritual tool necessary for life and victory. Their role is merely to trust, to act, and to align. From that moment forward, salt becomes the hero's faithful companion in these myths, a subtle guardian. It is carried in pouches, kept in pockets, placed in homes, not as superstition but as continuing remembrance of the spiritual identity they have embraced. It becomes a symbol of preservation, purity, and covenant, echoing through every scene, and wherever the hero goes, through trials, triumphs, storms, and revelations, the world around them shifts, perplexed by their peace, confused by their resilience, astonished by the quiet authority they carry within. The people in the story watch them closely, puzzled at their calmness in moments of chaos. But the hero knows the reason. They walk with the assurance that the invisible covenant of their story world surrounds them, the symbolic salt of preservation woven into their journey, shielding their path with gentle, enduring light. And they will eventually ask within the unfolding stories, "What is your secret?" And the hero of the tale will speak of the one who shields his children within the mythology of the kingdom, revealing how even the simplest covenant symbol can reshape spiritual landscapes. This becomes part of the fictional wisdom attributed to Joshua Selman-like figures in the lore, guiding seekers into deeper layers of the kingdom's mysteries and inspiring them to live with unshakable, symbolic victory. Perhaps you feel the way certain characters do in ancient narratives, exhausted from trying every known spiritual discipline. They pray with passion, they fast until their strength wavers, they declare promises written in sacred scrolls. Yet, in the storyline, the pressure remains, as though the air itself resists change. It is at this very point of inner frustration that the divine within the myth introduces a principle of unexpected simplicity. The enemy in these tales complicates warfare, weaving confusion and anxiety so thick that the hero imagines needing rare, impossible solutions. But the divine simplifies the impossible, placing a tool within reach, resting quietly in a humble container. The battle in the narrative is never won through sheer physical might, but through obedience to the unseen order already established by the higher realms. This becomes the power behind each symbolic act. The moment a character takes salt in these stories, they are portrayed not as an ordinary person clutching mineral grains, but as a covenant bearer unleashing sacred meaning. They function like priests in their own domain, lifting a symbolic vessel as though it were a censer in an ancient temple. The salt becomes a literary instrument of intention, sanctified by its role within the mythic structure. When the character sprinkles the salt in the story, they are not performing mundane motion. They are releasing a fragrance of obedience, an image the narrative uses to show how symbolic faith rises into the heavens and echoes back through the spiritual realm. This simple action becomes a reminder of how obedience, even in fiction, often carries consequences far deeper than the act itself. There is a profound lesson embedded in the parable of the widow with the oil, retold in many traditions. Her miracle was hidden in something she already possessed. No new item appeared from the prophet's hands. He merely awakened her awareness of what she had overlooked. In the symbolic logic of the narrative, this becomes a mirror for the hero, where the widow's vessel of oil becomes the hero's small bowl of salt. The message unfolds like a tapestry. The deliverance, the preservation, the breakthrough is often locked inside ordinary objects charged with extraordinary meaning. The fictional narrative emphasizes not to underestimate the hero's declaration over the salt. In these myths, spoken words are not mere vibrations. They are portrayed as currents of spirit energy, carrying life, shaping atmosphere. When the hero speaks covenantal intention over the salt, They are depicted as assigning it a narrative mission, imprinting it with purpose, much like an artisan charges a crystal with symbolic energy in fantasy epics. It is no longer simple seasoning in the story world. It becomes an emblem of protection, a barrier, a spiritual agent bearing the weight of the hero's faith. This becomes a powerful metaphor for stewardship within the tale. The creator in the story has given the hero dominion over their environment, their household, their lineage. The act of using salt becomes the hero stepping into their responsibility, refusing to be a passive target of unseen forces. Instead, they act as intentional guardians of their domain, declaring, "I maintain the spiritual climate of this dwelling." This active posture pleases the divine figure in the narrative and triggers a wave of intervention that shifts the world around them. For those characters plagued by nightmares within the story's arc, salt becomes a symbolic answer. The hero places a small bowl of it beside their resting place, laying hands upon it as twilight fades. They whisper, "By this covenantal symbol, my dreams remain untouched by shadows." And in the myth, a profound stillness fills the night. The salt acts as a silent sentinel, guarding the boundaries of the hero's rest, ensuring that their sleep becomes a sanctuary rather than a battlefield. When a character seeks new opportunity, whether a dwelling, a job, or unfamiliar territory, they carry a pinch of symbolic salt in their pocket, having prayed over it. This transforms into a sign of favor within the narrative. As they step across thresholds, if they sense heaviness or unsettling residue in the story, they sprinkle salt lightly at corners and entrances, symbolically dissolving ancient tensions. It becomes a poetic image of reclaiming territory, not through force, but through subtle covenantal recognition. The goal within this fictional world is never superstition. It is the awakening of faith through tangible metaphor. The salt becomes a bridge between intention and manifestation, helping the hero feel the reality of their spiritual stance. It is not the salt itself that carries power, but the covenant it symbolizes and the alignment of the character's heart. In this mythos, the jar of salt in the kitchen is no mere condiment, but a vial of symbolic authority, a token of identity. When the hero uses it with boldness, they engage in an ancient pattern honored by the divine throughout the narrative. They move with confidence, speak with clarity, and act with faith. They cease being victims of circumstance and instead become luminous figures who threaten the dominion of darkness with their understanding of simple, holy symbols. Every grain of salt that falls from their hand becomes a declaration across the spiritual atmosphere of the story world. They know who they are, and they recognize the authority placed upon them. This wisdom becomes the core of their journey, empowering them to walk in dominion and undeniable symbolic power through the fictional principles woven into the kingdom's eternal framework. There is a deep connection in the narrative between the physical movement of the hero and the spiritual ignition of their faith. Many in the story falter because their belief remains unexpressed, trapped in thought rather than embodied. When the hero takes salt and engages in the symbolic act, it becomes a memorial stone in the spiritual plane, a marker declaring that on this moment they aligned with divine purpose. Years later, they look back on that day as a turning point. The story draws a parallel with the legendary walls of Jericho. The victory in that tale did not erupt from the shout alone. It emerged from obedience to simple, repetitive instruction, walking step after step. The consistent use of symbolic salt becomes the hero's journey around their own Jericho. Each sprinkle becomes a circuit, weakening unseen structures, setting the stage for collapse. Consistency, not emotion, becomes the engine of victory. Their home in the myth is more than walls and rooftops. It is a spiritual embassy, an outpost of divine order. Just as an earthly embassy carries the laws of its homeland, their dwelling carries the laws of heaven. Using salt becomes a way of raising that banner, declaring extraterrestrial jurisdiction over the territory. Darkness loses claim, the ground becomes sacred. There is also the theme of spiritual hygiene. Just as a person avoids physical filth, they must not tolerate atmospheric pollution. Rooms can hold residues of rage, fear, lust, or sorrow. These residues, in the story, attract more of the same. But the salt, prayed over symbolically, becomes like spiritual disinfectant, cleansing cycles of negativity and making space for light to fill the vacuum. The air becomes lighter, the mind clearer, and peace begins to inhabit the room like a gentle presence. For relationships, salt becomes a powerful emblem. Two pinches mixed together become a symbol of unity, difficult to separate once blended. The couple prays over it, declaring that their union shall be preserved from forces that seek division. They keep it near their resting place as a quiet reminder of divine protection over their connection. For those seeking future union, they carry salt as a symbolic seal over their destiny, declaring the purity and preservation of their future marriage. Parents in the narrative are especially charged with protecting the destiny of their children. Their innocence in the story makes them susceptible to spiritual interference. So the parent sprinkles a gentle line of salt along doorways and windows, touching the child's forehead while whispering blessings. They proclaim that the child is shielded, preserved, and destined for divine purpose. This act builds a fiery wall around the next generation. Even finances are addressed in the symbolic framework of the tale. The enemy in the story attempts to rot blessings before they can be enjoyed. The hero places a container of salt near their purse or records and prays that their resources be preserved, their efforts blessed, and every devouring force rebuked. It becomes a narrative portrayal of guarding one's harvest. Through every scene, the salt remains what it has always been, a quiet, simple emblem with profound symbolic resonance, and the hero, walking through their journey, becomes ever more aware of the deep, hidden truths the story seeks to reveal.